Rashid Alek, and welcome to our FNVA podcast, Voices of Young Tibetans. The People's Republic of China, under the Communist Party of China, will be celebrating its 73rd founding anniversary in the coming days. Their founding in the year of 1949 ushered joy, freedom, and several other humane expressions. But it also simultaneously kickstarted the occupation of Tibet and Beijing's expansionist drive, which is happening at an accelerated pace nowadays. The 20th National People's Congress is set to take place from 16 October this year, and it is speculated, or is known, I should rather say, that during this legislative session, the unprecedented announcement of Xi Jinping as president for the third term is in line. So, under such burbling political climate in China, we'll try to unravel and bring clarity on it with our guest today. Without any further ado, I would now like to welcome our guest. We share a common interest in Pokemon and met for the first time during our days at TCV Selokui in Dehradun. He's a political individual more so than others I know. He has engaged with Chinese students in the United Kingdom and the US, and also interned at the Office of Tibet in Washington, D.C. Welcome to our podcast, Leela.
Thank you so much, Namdullah, for your kind introduction. Yes, my life has been eventful up till now. I did my primary schooling in Upper TCV. Then I moved to TCV Seliki where I met you. And then I got the good opportunity to study in Wales back in 2014. And then I went to the United States to pursue political science in 2016.
Okay, Chilila. So you shared a bit about your lives, but I would also like to probe a bit more and can you share to our audience about any lessons, views, or even experiences that you want to highlight being in exile on and also a Tibetan refugee?
Personally, I don't feel that good to introduce myself as a refugee, but it is what it is. I mean, uh, you're basically a tenant in someone else's home. So if the tenant, who is kind enough, like India, uh, asks us to leave, then we have no option but to leave. I don't think it'll happen, but it's just, it is like it is like that. So, but when you look into the population right now, we have so much to hope for. Like we have a, we have a good population who has high literacy rate, who has um, who has good knowledge about our relationship with India, our relationship with China. So I think in this generation we could make a serious push towards the goals that we have set, like the middle way policy or even freedom itself. It's just we need to remain sanguine, like we need to hope for the good things, but also remain realistic.
The things that you shared with us, it's very pertinent. But a thing that I would like to ask you and probe you deeper is how you travel abroad, right? You've been to Wales, you've been to United Kingdom, you've been to America, but being a Tibetan refugee, we have this identity certificate, right? The yellow color book. So did you
Yes.
face any problems when you were traveling abroad? Because from people's incidents, from people's narratives, I've heard how Tibetans have to go through an extra layer of security. I'm not sure. I haven't felt that, but you can throw more light on that. So Tilila.
So the thing with the identity certificate is that it looks peculiar. It's yellow, and the rest of the passport for Indians looks like blue. So even in Indian airports, you get stopped. They ask you what it is, and it'll take extra time. But one incident that has stuck with me for my life has been like when I was in when I first came to UK. I didn't know like the I didn't know the identity certificate was something special. Like it was. I thought that every people from India, like who are born in India, gets this. So when I went to the United Kingdom, I so the immigration desk stops me, and then they ask me what it is, and then it took me about like 15. It took them about like 15 or 30 minutes to see and to approve me. So it was quite embarrassing for me sometimes because I had friends waiting for me outside who were waiting for the bus. But it gives you the realization that that you're a refugee. So it's good in some cases because it does make you realize that you need to work something about that. You need to do something about it. And I hope I will do that in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Like I believe we Tibetans go through that a lot. Like the experience of refugee being in exile is something all of us who are in India and who are even abroad feel that from time to time.
Yes,
So
particularly. Yes. So as a refugee, like because in India we live in like such a cocoon place. Like every one of us is a Tibetan, so you don't feel that much. You don't feel that much of a. You don't feel that much special. But when you are abroad, like let's say in a school, and you're the only Tibetan, you feel something else. Like you feel like you need to do something about it because everyone else has like everyone else has a land. Everyone else has the right to go back to their own land. I don't, and it is sad, but yes, it gives you the hope to do something good. Like I hope that's what everyone feels.
definitely, like you said yourself, like how you were the only one, and I had this experience when I was in Hindu College, Delhi University. Like I was the only Tibetan in class, and there was a topic about Tibet, and it so came to a situation how I had to defend Tibet to an extent, and it got quite intense to an extent. But I think that is what it means to be a Tibetan right now. Like you have to create your own niche, create the space for engagement. So very interesting, like being a refugee, though it has its own limitations, but there are certain perks, especially being a Tibetan under the guidance of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama.
True, true. I agree because back in my high school in Wales, we had like the Model United Nations. So my senior, who was actually a Tibetan, was very skilled, and she actually put Tibet as a nation that you can as a nation in the United as the nation in the Model United Nations. So when I was in my second year, I had to defend the inclusion of it, and it was quite hard because I mean, I mean, de facto, like before 2000, like before the 1947 or something, de facto we might be independent, but de jure, I mean, it's a different story because China has already claimed a lot of the land that Tibet historically claims. So, I mean, it's a fine rope that you walk into. Like you need to navigate all those spaces and then see like how you can like convince those people. Uh, it was quite hard. So yeah, uh, that was my experience.
Definitely, Chile. So now, like, I think we should now go into the subject a bit. And I would like to ask you whether you can give us a brief elaboration on the governmental structure of the People's Republic of China, when like, the Communist Party of China is at the center.
Yes. So to elaborate more about the structure of the government in China, it's pretty hard because it's arcane. Like not everyone knows about it, and I think like it's so different from other structures like India or the United States that we know so much of. Um, and as you said, the structure of the Chinese government is synonymous with the party itself, which is the Communist Party. And I think that's because the party wants to preserve the monopoly that it has over the system uh, and the nation itself. So there are no co-equal branches of government in China. So uh, it's because power has been so centralized. I mean, centralized into like centralized so much so that you can generally point at the Politburo members and they control all of the government. But but if we have to take a look into the system, I think the four facets I think of the four facets of the government that I would like to generally uh, describe more about would be the State Council, the Military Commission, uh, and the CPPCC, which is the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. And the State Council is where the ministries and all the functionaries are. based at. It's headed by the premier. The PLA is the military commission, and also it has the powerful police, which is headed by the president, which is the general secretary of the Communist Party, and also the CPPCC, which is quite a gamut, the Chinese People Political Consultative Conference, which is a body separate to the state because it's like it's like when the party and the state both consult with the PPCC on policy issues. So they consult them, and the PPCC then consults the NPC, which is the National People's Congress, about the legislations. And now we can talk more about the NPC, which is the final facet of the government that I generally put. The NPC, which is the National People's Congress, oversees the State Council, also the presidency, the Supreme People's Court, the Public Prosecutor's Office, and the military. So in practice, the NPC, like People's Congresses at every level of administration, like small NPCs, is controlled by the Communist Party, and therefore they are likely to be exercising little oversight of any other institution. So they are generally they're expected to approve all the budgets. They're generally expected to approve all the agency reports, also like approve personal appointments and legislation. So it's basically like a puppet in itself of the party.
So yeah, Chile, you definitely made it clear about the structure, governmental structure of how the People's Republic of China is. And like we Tibetans, not only Tibetans, most of the people, to an extent, like we tend to associate a government with those three pillars or maybe four pillars of democracy. So, but hearing about the structure, a very different structure about China was fascinating. And I think even our audience can learn a bit from here. And you stressed upon the National People's Congress, right? It is the legislative side of the government. And people commonly call the current National People's Congress of China as a rubber stamp. But like right now, we have the 20th NPC coming up, right? So can you
Yes.
elaborate and share with us its significance and its relevance?
So by the visual of it, so the 20th National NPC, which is the National Party Conference, I think National Party Congress, sometimes they call it like the National People's Congress of the Communist Party. Yeah, National People's Congress of the Communist Party. So by the visual of it, like when you take a look, when you look into the conferences, the NPC, the 20th NPC would have the center would have the communist emblem, which is the sickle and the hammer in the center of it. And then when you look into the rubber stamp, which is the National People's Congress, they would have the emblem of the Chinese, the PRC, which is the People's Republic of China. So that's the difference in appearances. In actual sense, the NPC, which is by which I mean the NPC of the Communist Party, what they do is that they elect the general secretary, they elect the Politburo, and they also elect the people who will go into the National People's Congress. National People's Congress, which is the PRC, which is the rubber stamp. So they hold all the power. And by all the power, I mean the people that they elect. And it has already been decided, so it's not even I don't think there would be any major surprises. I think Xi Jinping would get the unprecedented third term. I think some members of the Politburo would retire, and then people from the next generation would come up and take some pieces of it. But then if you look into the nitty-gritty of it, now we have to look into the Xi Jinping thought. How would Xi Jinping thought be implemented into the constitution? So those are the things that we need to look forward as political scientists and research more regarding this.
Definitely, Chile. And one thing that you really pointed out, an interesting thing, was how there's going to be a generational shift of leadership. As far as I know, like in the Politburo of the Standing Committee, they have a certain age limit. So with that, there is a generational shift that is going to occur. So do you think that such a shift in leadership will have an impact on the attitude of China towards its occupied nations of Tibet, East Turkestan, Southern Mongolia, etc.?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think there would be like a huge shift in like policy or something like that in any kind of leadership change, not even like the next generation, because the Chinese Communist Party vets their candidates very properly. Like they would they would check all the records and see like if they have any kind of like blemishes, like let's say corruption or even dissent. So people who are promoted like upwards, they don't have any kind of like corruption cases or even like dissent. Like they don't usually talk back regarding the government's policy or something like that. So when we talk about the next generation of Chinese leaders within the Communist Party, I don't see much hope in like I don't place much hope in those leaders as far as policy regarding Tibet uh, or East Turkestan or like the minorities are concerned. But the interesting thing to look forward is that I think one of the premier candidates for the premier of People's Republic of China would be a candidate who knows Tibetan really well, like the Tibetan language really well, and also has been working in Tibet under Hu Jintao. So would be interesting to see what he does if he is ever being appointed to the premier's position.
Definitely, Tilia. But one thing that I'm really worried about is how this generational shift is occurring to an extent that the leaders currently who are going to take the baton of leadership are Chinese born after the Cultural Revolution. Like Chinese born before that, and even before they were founded, like in 1949, they had to experience that struggle. They know what's right or wrong to an extent. So having
Yes.
leaders not experience that and like making them rule the CCP, would that not have an impact? That's what I believe. I mean, you have your own thoughts, though.
Yes, but I generally disagree on that fact uh, because what the Chinese government stresses is stability. So if there is like a generational shift into leadership or something, it creates instability. Like let's that's a fact because when you're looking into stability, like a policy shouldn't change that much so that we have to like make like we have to make like real changes into it. So through the lenses of stability, I don't think the I don't think any kind of generational shift within the leadership of the Communist Party would make such changes. It's because that we Tibetans place a lot of hope. Let's say, like during the 17th People's Congress, my dad said that we placed a lot of hope on Xi Jinping, who was then appointed the vice president. We said that he had a great connection. His father had a great connection with the Panchen Lama. That he knows the struggle of being like left out of the Communist Party because he joined the Communist Party really late, and then we placed a lot of hope in him. And when you look back now, when now we have come like 15 years later, I mean, the situation has deteriorated, hasn't it? And now look into the zero COVID policy that Xi Jinping follows like rigorously. Like, I mean, I see little to no hope in the next generation because I think they would carry on the same.
Definitely,
But,
Tilly.
but,
That
but
is
what do
an
you think? But what do you think?
I think there would be a certain level of change because we have seen this since Xi Jinping has come to power since 2013, and more recently with the Seventh Tibet World Forum that was held at 2020, and since then we've seen the level of escalation at the border occurring with India, and also the repressive policies carried out in Tibet. It's been like manful increase. It's like not what it used to be. It's like increasing. It's increasing to such an extent that it's people don't take notice of it. I think that's the problem because recently we've heard this case of how DNAs of Tibetans are being collected. It was not
True.
collected this year, it was not collected last year, it has been collected since 2016 and many years back. You can see how, China has been doing very violative things, I must say. And
True.
like you, to an extent, you you sort of said that your father placed a bet on Xi Jinping about how he might bring change. But I don't know. You also seem to be in a certain way of placing a bet to the current premier, who you say was an underling of Hu Jintao, and he might, But we never know. We Tibetans can
I,
do that. We can place hope.
I know. Yeah, because we are Tibetans. I mean, it's the only thing that we have is hope. I mean, uh, but I don't. But as I said, I don't have much hope on Huchun at the perspective for me. But I'm interested to see like what he does. Like I'm interested because let's see what he does. But yes, actually, when you talk about like the mass DNA collection, I think the main issue that the international media like raises is that like the DNA has been collected en masse, like the numbers have risen, and then yes, as you said, like back in like 2015 or 16, when I was an intern at the Department of Information and International Relations in CTA, we actually had a research done regarding like the social credit system in Tibet, how like Tibetans would be placed under like certain stratus of like status, so that if they have like records of like dissent or anything, their credit score would be low, their loan application would be denied, they wouldn't get like a they wouldn't be able to get a ride in taxis or even have a hotel to sleep in. So yes, particularly when you look into things in that perspective, yes.
Definitely. It's very sad to see the condition in Tibet, and I believe we must be the voices to them, and now I think I would like to ask you, like you mentioned previously when we were talking about how you interacted and met with Chinese students while you were studying abroad. What were
Yeah.
your thoughts while engaging with them, and did the conversation or engagement with them bring you any clarity on Tibet?
Well, I didn't. Well, when I first talked with Chinese, they were friendly and they were really smart. Like they know what they talk. They know what they were talking about. I mean, their command over the Chinese history, or even basic things, were really good. So I was expecting a little bit more like clarity on Tibet, but I didn't get it because what they were taught was that Tibet was a landlocked country where serfdom was rife, and then when you talk more about like the oppression and everything, I think the Chinese are oblivious because for one thing, the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda machine has been quite good. I mean, you see them, and then the Chinese student who comes to like certain places like United Kingdom or even the United States, like they are elite. I mean, they didn't have to go through the struggles of like normal day Chinese, I think. But I have nothing bad to say about them because I mean, they listened to me. They listened to the problems that I shared, and they had some good thoughts, like how to tackle those things. Like once they asked me a question that said, "Do you think His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a part of the solution to take Tibet forward?" And and yes, that thought provoked me, like to see like how would we do without His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So I mean, talking with the Chinese doesn't give you that much clarity on Tibet, but it certainly gives you something to think about. Like um, because we have been raised with only like few perspectives, and having more perspectives would definitely help us, like trying to pave a future, like uh, where we could live peacefully with Chinese. I hope.
That was a very interesting anecdote that you shared when interacting with Chinese students. And yes, I think with Tibetans, not only Tibetans, but people who want to know about China should at least interact with them, get to know what they are thinking. And you also mentioned the, juggernaut, the United Front Work Development, the propaganda machine. Like I was uh, witness to it like recently, not recently, I think a few weeks back when Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, visited Taiwan, there was this whole ruckus about this one China policy. The Twitter account of the official Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China posted how, a certain number of countries are supporting the one China policy. What is
Yes,
this? Like, this sort of machine is very, well efficient. I think we should laud that, and we can also learn from that.
true. The China of the future, I think, would be so aggressive, like because any blemishes to their sovereignty is taken really seriously. Like when you see those like when you see like when you see like America criticizing like China's foreign policy. I mean, America doesn't criticize that much, but when you see like people supporting like Taiwan, like the speaker, or even like the senators or uh, representatives, China swiftly responds, and I think the I think the time for like China to like I think the I think the best solution I think for like China I think the best solution I mean the best solution for China's rise as a superpower in like the Asian subcontinent would be the rise of India, because I think India is a better representative government than China. And if we are able to facilitate that, like if we are able to facilitate the rise of India as a, s- as a power in the Asian subcontinent, which provides which provides which is not autocratic, which is not I think that should be a good solution.
Definitely. That is an interesting thought about India. We live in India and we sort of forget the vastness, the incredible India, should I say. So, yeah, definitely. We must raise India to its wanted pedestal.
Yes,
And
and I don't think India would be that forceful because I mean, India does have its own issues with Kashmir and everything. But then when you talk about like abuses, I think China is on another level. Like as you said, like the DNA collection, and then also like the assimilation process, and also like when you see the migration crisis, which is like in Tibet, like when you see like cities, like Tibetan cities, where the Chinese population is almost catching up with the Tibetan living there. I mean, that creates a problem in itself because now you see two competent cultures competing with self, and I think that's a big problem to the Tibetan culture in itself. So those kind of things, I don't see it happening in India. So, I mean, I think India is a better alternative as a power in the Asian subcontinent, and I think India is a better representative government. So, I think it it certainly does um, represents the will of the people.
definitely, Chile, I second you on that thought. And now moving on, like, being an individual, right, to yourself, who has volunteered for the Office of Tibet in Washington, D.C. Firstly, what were your experiences there? And like, you also have been to the United Kingdom or Wales, like, so were there any differences that you found in UK and USA when it comes to supporting Tibet?
I don't. Let me answer the second question first because I think it's short. Because I don't see much difference when it comes to support for Tibet from the UK or the United States. I think it's because of my environments, and I'm sorry because it's that most of the time my environments are like international students, so I think they are well educated, and even though they are not educated about Tibet, they like to listen and then they like to like research on their own. So that helps in a bit. So that's why I'm saying like there is no difference to me. There might be some difference to other people, like to other individuals. I don't know about that. Let me get on the first question itself. So yes, I did volunteer as an intern back in 2008, 2017, I think, as in the Office of Tibet. Back then, I think it was Gung Pepala, the current Sikyong, who was the ambassador, and we had uh, we had I think 4 or 5 staffs, and then I had another intern with me, and it was quite hectic because during those 3 months, a lot was happening. A lot happened. I mean, first of all, I think it was the time when the Republican administration of President Trump decided to cut foreign aid to Tibet. It created quite a ruckus around the office, and since we were short-staffed, I think ICT and all those all those all those groups who helped Tibet like came to the front, and then they solved the problems quite nicely. And then we had the visit of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to I think it was UC San Diego or UC Davis. And it was quite a problem because I think the Chinese students were protesting that he shouldn't be the one that's speaking at their graduation or something like that. It created a lot of problems. And yes, so because of that problem, Kumo Pembala and I think it was Kumo Tashila, who was the Chinese liaison, they went to California to aid His Holiness the Dalai Lama's entourage. And so we had only like 2 or 3 people in the office, so we had to like maintain the logistics and everything. It was quite uncomfortable for me first because I've never been like that much. I've never been put under that much pressure to perform. But I think when you're uncomfortable, that's when you learn the most, like in terms of experience and in terms of like living up to the expectations that they set you up with. It was quite a nice experience. So, and then finally, I think it was the visit of the Karmapa, the 17th Karmapa, His Holiness the Karmapa, which is Ugyen Chile Doje La. And it was quite good. I was quite fortunate to visit him. I was quite fortunate to meet him. And yeah, it basically was quite a experience.
So, Chile, something that you mentioned that caught my attention was how, like in 2015, the Republican administration under the former president of America, Donald Trump, cut the foreign aid fund for Tibet. But it was his very own administration that pushed for the Tibet Policy Act of 2020. And right now, even though we are under the Joe Biden administration, senators who were elected during that period are pushing for the bill of promoting a resolution for the Tibet-China conflict. So what is your view on that?
Well, the administration of President Trump did cut the foreign aid of Tibet, but it wasn't that specific. I think it was a major cut, like they wanted to cut something, and the foreign aid seems to be like the most popular one because, let's face it, like no taxpayer wants their tax dollars given to causes that they don't have any knowledge about. But then, yes, the Trump administration did, under the leadership of Representative McGovern, Senator Rubio. I think it was also Senator Leahy who spearheaded the effort to have like the Tibet Policy Act signed by President Trump. My thought is that despite the administration change or anything like that, Tibet remains a poignant issue for the United States because the United States has certain interest in it because if we push forward, like if we have like human rights, if we have like the safeguarding of human rights in Tibet, it generally means that China is opening up, and it means the successful implementation of U.S. policy, because then China wouldn't be as much of a threat to United States as it is now. So it all depends on national interest. So I think the United States is acting on their national interests much so more than I think the aspect of humanity and everything.
Okay, Chitala. So finally, I would like to ask you or request you whether you have any messages to our Tibetan sisters and brothers, and also to those individuals and organizations who constantly stand by us Tibetans.
I do. The message I always like feel inside my heart is that of gratitude, even to the Tibetans who work tirelessly for our freedom, even without like tiniest bit of recognition or any kind of like space to talk about it. It's of gratitude, and also to those who are not Tibetans who are working tirelessly for Tibetans. I've seen that in Washington D.C. when people who are American or even internationals who are working in ICT. They work tirelessly, and it inspires me a lot. And so what it does is that they create a social movement which which directly influences what we do. Like they create a social movement that influences the Tibetan government, and also like they create something to fight for. Like let's say like during the Olympics or something like that, they created a movement so that, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, even though they said boycott the Olympics, it wouldn't happen, but it created a sense that there's something to fight for. Like there are Tibetans who are willing to like go, they're willing to like push forward with their messages. So it inspires me a lot, and I hope that it inspires a lot of people. And I only have like my thanks to give to them.
So thank you, Chilila, for being our guest today. You make it very clear of the changing dynamics occurring in the Chinese communist regime. And from this, I firmly believe we Tibetans simply must now not be observers or narrators, but rather catalysts for warranted change to bring a sustained and needful resolution regarding Tibet's occupation by China. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Damdula. It was quite great to talk to you.
Thank you.